X gon' give it to ya. He gon' give it to ya. X gon' give it to ya. He gon' give it to ya.
Cling it right.
Yeah, that's how we do it.
It's not too difficult.
Hi, I'm Ben, and that's Jose, and you are watching Too Fast, Too Movie. Today, we are going over the Legends of Vox Machina, specifically episodes 3, 4, 6, Shadows at the Gate, Fate's Journey, and Spark Rebellion, as well as some outside elements, including the reception of this whole thing, critic reviews, and the general state of the adaptation. And as per usual, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're back from last week's video, which I hope some of you are, yeah, just keep in mind, we're going to be covering this for the entirety of the run and maybe a little bit after. I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah, it's, well, Legends of Vox Machina content is interesting. I want to know, Jose, because you're the non-critter here.
Yep.
What are your general thoughts, just like as far as like these next 4 episodes, especially like the improvements that were made to the show? Like, because I know that we had some gripes last episode, but how are you feeling overall?
I'm feeling really good with it. I think it, I wouldn't say necessarily it picked up the pace, but like it ramped up. Because I think I brought this up last time that a lot of shows have a good start and then just kind of immediately drop off.
Yeah.
But this one, I feel like it's keeping on a nice, steady run.
So here's the thing. I'm a good thing still. I think it's the opposite. I think that the first 2 episodes were probably the weakest.
Well, I mean, like
the
with these
entire
episodes.
show.
With these episodes.
Yeah, but like it didn't just like pick up and stay. It like ramped up. Like a couple people that are on the channel but are not in this conversation like have started watching, and basically what I'm hearing from my non-critical role watching friends are just like, man, I was really worried the first 2 episodes, but like, holy shit, is this show so good now? I will say we had some gripes last episode that in my mind have all been kind of addressed, like literally within just episode. I think when I watched just episode 4, I put in the group chat, I'm just like, everything I complained about was just fixed.
Yeah, as I was on my way home, I think I saw that notification pop up and I was like, oh, yep, there it is.
Yep.
We'll have a discussion ready.
Yeah, it's I will say one of the first things that I want to go over is the critic reviews are still extremely high on this show, which I was still, again, genuinely not expecting. Mostly because, again, the first 2 episodes were very weak, and my biggest nitpick of them was the dialogue and how it's handled. For a lot of people, like a general script writing rule is to avoid cursing, not because cursing's bad, but because it's often used as a crutch and can feel like a crutch. So, like, the way that the bar fight opens up, like, as a fan, I was in love with that scene, but when I went back and rewatched it, I'm like, there's fuck said, like, 15 different times. There's, like, a bunch of shit jokes. There's a bunch of piss jokes, and it's just very crude, very raunchy off the bat, and it felt almost insecure, but at the same time, now that we're, like, in it, I have none of those problems. There's way less reliance on crude humor. Like, the funny moments are genuinely funny because they're good jokes, and the serious moments are very, very well delivered.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I want to say, like, a lot of, like, with this show and, like, of course, the people in it specifically, that the jokes aren't really like a crutch, but I get what you mean, because a lot of times it can really feel like that.
Yeah, well, I think my thing is because like I have to do this really interesting dance, and I completely understand where Abraham is with Attack on Titan now, where when you're familiar with the source material and you're a fan of the source material, but now you also have to critique the adaptation, and kind of maintaining this line between fan and also critic is a very difficult stance to take. And part of me initially was very worried that that is one of the reasons why we've seen the Legends of Vox Machina rating so high, would be that fans would review bomb it in a good way. However, a lot of the reviews that I'm seeing from critics have been extremely high. The show's overall rating jumped up a couple points, I believe, on IMDb and Metacritic. Last I saw, about a while ago, I want to say last week when I looked at the Metacritic, it was like a 7.8 or like an 8.1, which I thought was, a fair review, a good surmise of the first 3 episodes. And then now it's at a 9.1, which is like a that's like a 10% increase ish, 10 to 15%. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I think it deserves it.
Yeah, it's come a long way. I will say one of the other things that I thought was very well done as far as this that addressed another major problem that we had last week was the actual way that they've been handling sort of character development.
Right.
So we've experienced a fascinating new avenue with Pike, which I'm kind of curious as to what you think is going on there, because like I know why that's there, but I'm also very in the dark on what's going to be happening.
Well, since we discussed about Ashley's having to leave,
Yeah.
I had a feeling that this was the hidden backstory part of it that was getting covered, I guess, in this show. And I like it mostly because a lot of times we don't really get to see like the improvement kind of thing. Like a lot of shows will go through with the main story, bring in the character, and then we'll have an episode dedicated to that part. So I kind of like the back and forth kind of A-B plot line with this.
Yeah. And I'm not even quite sure that I can it's almost a C plot, because sometimes we will get an A plot and a B plot in the show. However, we just get one scene with Pike. And that's kind of been the vibe with both episodes with Pike out, which, Fate's Journey and Spark of Rebellion. The big element here is none of us, the people that have seen this before, know what's happening with that.
Okay.
So there's actually a pretty major feat that has happened in 2 of these episodes. In both Shadow at the Gates and Fate's Journey, they have gone completely off book. Almost not a single event that has happened in there is something that we have seen. So the entire plot of the house arrest, there was a house arrest, but they just broke out and left. And there was there were no ghosts that came after them. There was no going for the book. I'm pretty sure that they didn't even take the book into their possession in the original. So they've added, they did some basic storytelling stuff. They added a MacGuffin that drove the plot forward, but also there is the other element of this, which I personally really like, which is the fact that they've successfully shown what leveling up for a D&D character looks like, as far as real world versions of that. Like Scanlan finding a scroll, Killith willing the sun into her hands.
Yeah. So I had a hard time thinking about that as leveling up, mostly just because I was just into it watching it. But it is something you very rarely see with a lot of fantasy kind of animation shows or in general. So
yeah,
it's a very pleasant look.
I mean, that was one of the things that I was I talked about it last episode as sort of the magic system, is how do you take a D&D magic system and turn it into something that's palpable for story consumption in a non-interactive way? Because one of the most historic problems that happen with video game adaptations is the video game is meaningful in the fact that you are interacting in the story. And the most mechanically gamey part of Dungeons and Dragons is probably spellcasting. I mean, there are basic combat and stuff, but spellcasting is the one thing that is not roleplay and story focused in that game.
Right. I think I agree, because with the many games that I've played that involve leveling up, and that gives you the feel of in being involved in all that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't usually translate well into media, and and a lot of with video game adaptations, you don't really get that vibe because they usually just go mostly story based.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that is the most interesting to me about this whole this entire project that is Legends of Vox Machina, is the fact that they are adapting something that has never been adapted before. No one's adapted a tabletop game into a television series. Some people may have adapted their own tabletop games into books. I'm sure that is the case for a lot of fantasy authors.
A lot of it, yeah.
Yeah, but no one's ever done anything like this where it's been actually adapted into 3-act structure storytelling for the screen. And the fact that they're able to take something as gamey as leveling up and turn it into something that feels natural in the story where you didn't even notice that it was them leveling up. But the entire time I'm like, Percy's building bad news. This is when he gets it in the gunslinger tree. Like, that's what was going through my head watching this. And like, oh, Keyleth is casting Daylight, which is something that she got at that level because it's a high level spell. That's kind of a big thing. The fact that they were able to make that come off as a well-rounded story moment.
Yeah, it was really cool to see. What can I say?
I think other character-wise, they did exactly what we wanted them to do with Percy. Percy is our main focus, main character for this. However, we are glimpsing in, and I actually there was one thing that I wanted to bring up to you that I did not put in show notes that I'm now realizing right now. The way that this show is being built is as an ensemble cast, and historically we have seen ensemble cast exist only as like you focus on like maybe one or two people, but really that's it, and everyone else is supporting cast. You don't really get a ton of plot lines involved for the supporting cast, and if you do, it's usually just one episode, and it's like kind of there, or either that or it's super heavy focus. This actually, for me, I'm noticing it harkens back to an older version, but it's being pulled off a lot more successfully because it's borrowing from the newer supporting cast roles. This reminds me a lot more of the kind of ensemble cast that we would have seen in Teen Titans, where we're seeing large bits. Every episode is still giving us focus on each character somewhat evenly. However, one character might have an arc.
That is definitely a very good example, I think the word for or like accurate representation of it, because Teen Titans, not even just with the main roster, but like the villains, the West Coast Titans, I believe they're called at some point. Like each of them at least get a little bit of a plot line every now and then. So, because like with Teen Titans specifically, we get I know like one specific plot is like Cyborg with one of his car, the other being him being completely mechanical. Raven and her dad is one, Beast Boy, and like that's a plot line.
That's a whole thing.
Starfire and Blackfire. Robin is going to Nightwing. It's
I just want to say for fandom accuracy, I am in no way saying that Teen Titans is a good show because it has so many problems. However, I think Teen Titans actually did kind of nail something early on as to how to do large ensemble cast.
Well, also don't forget, compared with this one, Teen Titans is more kids based.
Oh yeah, 100%. This is
quite the opposite.
Hi,
actually,
children. Would you like to watch Legends of Vox Machina?
Yeah.
Would you like to see Scanlan's balls?
Would you like to see Scanlan's monster, that toughest monster?
Oh my god,
that one caught me off guard.
Yeah, he's. There's so many things that I am so excited for us to get to that are not even in this season, but I'm at the point right now where I know that this show is probably going to be renewed for a third season based off of the quality that we're getting. The second season's already there.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to Amazon for it, and it's picking up a lot of steam. So with that, I think now let's go into some individual episode breakdown. However, so far so good for essentially all of this show for me. So let's start with Shadow at the Gates. This episode is almost completely fabricated. There are some characters that existed, however, they used to exist in different roles. Specifically, Captain Geralt, and in this, Vox Machina is of course put under house arrest for attacking the Briarwoods, ruining Sovereign Uriel's feast. And they really mucked it up, but somehow Vex manages to swindle their way into only being under house arrest. They are, of course, in possession of that one book, though, and they're flipping through it, and there's there's the Whisper one. There's something called a Ziggurat. There's something that Scanlan says in the other episode, which I cannot remember, but it just made me fucking shiver. And then, of course, they are attacked by some very ghosty fellows that were summoned by Lady Briarwood herself. One of the... for me, this is the episode that, again, like, I immediately put it in the group chat, like, holy shit, everything's fixed. This is great. And this is, like, also, like, this is the episode where they officially start their journey, and we're out of the first act of the show. Like, the inciting incident is over. They have begun their journey outwards, and Pike ends up doing her thing as well because she no longer has connection to the Everlight. The interesting thing here, though, in my opinion, for this whole episode, is the way that they do the character groupings and character development for each individual character. So, one of the most obvious things that people are going to be looking at is the Percy and Keyleth dynamic.
Right.
Because how much did you know about Keyleth's character going into this?
Going into this, nothing.
Okay.
I didn't know much about like any character.
Okay, gotcha.
I just know who existed.
Who existed?
Yeah.
Some general fan bits
Exactly.
for each thing.
Yeah.
Man, the ships in the show are like impossible to not get spoiled on. We're not going to talk about them too much.
I think you get hinted at it with it, but
they're heavily hinted. That being said, Percy and Keyleth, there were a couple takeaways as far as what Keyleth's whole deal is doing all this. That she's been sent out. She cannot return home until she finishes this Aramente. When I said last episode that there's a very strong hero's journey for her, this is kind of the forefront of this. However, we're only seeing bits and pieces right now. Is there, as far as you're concerned with this, do you think that this was well done? Because again, for me, I'm coming at this completely from I know everything, so like I cannot be super objective.
Like well done in her story, or
I would say like as far as character development for her.
I think it's kind of still like in a work in progress, but I guess that's just me coming from a not knowing anything role. But I definitely like the idea of it. I'm surprised because whenever I made a character, it was never like a backstory with that. But
you didn't give your character
like a story like
journey.
Can't come back to like anything like.
Oh man.
Well, because I don't know if any of my current campaign people are with me, so I can't really go into this backstory. But basically, like with Keyleth specifically, I think it's a very like kind of touching backstory, and I think that fits for an elf. So,
it's a very druidic one. You know what, Marisha, you got me in the heart because I don't think I've ever written a fucking D&D character that's been allowed to go home. I don't think I've had a single one that I've been like, oh yeah, they have a place to go. Like,
well, my current character, he doesn't have a home, so.
Oh yeah, well there you go.
Yeah,
it's kind of what you want to do to get an adventurer out there. And again, of course, there is the sort of dynamic between the two. Keyleth trying to sort of calm Percy down and trying to empathize with him.
Right.
But of course, Percy is
hard-headed.
Curiously for you, what do you think her motives were with this?
Trying to be kind of like the supporting role, really, in like this little dynamic. I wouldn't say like, specifically like hard feelings for her or anything like that, but it's like definitely a compassion, like caring feeling that she has, like, and trying to like, keep Percy from going down the wrong path kind of story.
There's certainly hints of that. I will say, one of the things that really sticks out for me, and this is wholly in the way that this is being adapted, this is something that like I think every character has had at one point with Percy during this arc in the original bit, when it was a tabletop game, is a lot of everyone saw the thing with the smoke happen in the courtyard, and Keyleth to me seems to be the one person that's like really like, hey, what the fuck is that? I see her in this moment as being, she is that nice person. She is the mom friend of the group. There is no question about that. However, usually when I see her go, like, especially in this, I'm seeing an ulterior motive of not just checking to see if he's okay, but trying to figure out what the fuck is going on with him. She's not going to ask directly because she's Keyleth, But I think that for me personally, I just see that being what she's trying to do.
Right. I think that kind of being like the mom friend is like, well, one, there's always one in a group.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And not even just D&D, but but like, yeah, I completely agree with you with like her and like support and all that.
Yeah. The other element that was very much a dynamic that I think has been done a lot of justice has been the Pike and Grog dynamic. We haven't gotten a lot of character development for Grog, though. However, I think Grog's role right now is literally just supporting cast.
Yeah.
That's all he has to do.
That's the
right
vibe I've been
now.
getting as well.
He's got to be the big, lovable teddy bear that could probably rip both your arms off. And he's got to be a teddy bear around Pike. Those are the rules. I don't make them. That's just how it is.
Reminds me of my orc character.
There's something about the... Like, yes, the stupid barbarian is a trope in D&D. Honestly, every single character that was here feels like someone's first D&D character. That being said, do I think that Travis's embodiment of that character and that trope work incredibly well? Yes. And we will get more stuff for Grog later down the line that will be very well done. One of the interesting things, though, that is that's always a little upsetting is the majority of Krog's backstory and story focus was actually all done before the campaign began, before it was brought onto stream. And it's something that was only ever hinted at in later portions, which we're probably going to see in season 2.
Right.
And I wonder if they'll go back and revisit it, but it's also one of those things that they might just leave open so that people read their comic book series, because their comic book series does actually cover.
Oh yeah, I was actually very interested in that because I remember just seeing an ad for I think it was the one with Jester or just the whole campaign too. I gotta get more into comics again because I missed them so much.
I actually I have the first 2 full books. If you,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, that's just me. I like saw them in the comic book store and I'm just like, yes.
Real quick to interject because I want to kind of like get a little bit of a mindset. The groupings for like when they were under house arrest, was that part of the campaign, like specifically the group?
No, that was completely invented for this episode.
Okay. Because personally thinking like as a DM, I'm like, how do you choose like who goes where and like with who and all that?
So I will say from a DM standpoint, if I am to do something like that, it is because I want certain player characters that haven't had an opportunity to bond to do so.
That's fair.
That being said, I think in this situation for a show point, it was to exemplify these bonds because we're 4 episodes in at this point.
Yeah, you're right.
And all these characters are still kind of caricature-esque.
Yeah, because we're halfway through the season right now, right?
We just got to halfway through the season.
Just with this one,
with
yeah.
episode 6.
All right, and the other question I wanted to ask was, from your knowledge of the whole first campaign, how do you think it will be done in 2 seasons or more, or?
So it really depends on the pace that they decide to go to.
Right. With how you're feeling with the pace with right now.
So the pace that we're in right now, I think in order to finish the entire campaign, they need anywhere between, if they really wanted to rush it, 3 seasons. If they wanted to do it correctly, 4 to 5. The reason for that is this arc is one of the this arc is a very well-paced arc. It's one very contained story. The next arc that comes after this, which I'm not going to say the name of, only because if I say the name of, you'll immediately be able to figure out what the plot is based off of the first couple episodes in this season. That arc is more than, I think, 2/3 of the entire online campaign and has a lot of miniature arcs in it.
Okay.
So through that arc, we actually end up with these full-blown miniature stories that explore Vex and Vax, explore Keyleth, explore Scanlan. Scanlan is actually going to get some crazy character development, like I think almost beginning of season 2, actually. And we can't, in order for them to do it justice, they're going to have to take the long approach. Now, the question here is if Amazon has that much faith in them and will give them that run, or if they will do what Netflix did to BoJack Horseman and cut them off and force them to rush the entire ending.
Yeah, because
That's going to be a major problem if that happens.
Because as much as I love BoJack, that ending did feel like very rushed and
it's
left me feeling.
I have such a bittersweet. I love that show. I still love that show. I think that the last episode of that show is very good. However, the last season itself is a rushed piece, and you can just feel it based off of character development. And I pray that does not happen to this show, especially now that it looks like we are getting multiple seasons.
Yeah, I think though with I don't know how much say the cast of Critical Role has with this. I would say at least a good amount.
They have to have a lot of creative control.
Yeah, I think they will definitely not let that happen.
Well, it depends on... So this is where we start getting into the world of TV contracts and what can really happen. Because ultimately speaking, if they are signed with Amazon, Amazon has final say in runtime and what is ordered, because they're the ones footing the bill.
Yeah, and they can easily axe it whenever. So
yeah, we will be at Amazon's mercy. That being said, Amazon has had a really good history of understanding how to lengthen their shows. The fact that Invincible was just one season and covered like a minuscule portion of what's in the comics is a very good sign.
Yeah.
Now, if they Shonen Jump it and fucking make up an ending, that will be a problem. But we'll kind of have to see from there.
Right.
The last character dynamic, which I think is very interesting for a lot of the critters watching this who do not know what's going to happen, is they've added seemingly a inter-party plot line with the twins. And this was actually exemplified in the pairing of the twins and Scanlan, where Scanlan's off doing his own thing. He's making a fucking sandwich. It is what it is. But the twins are basically debating, do they jump ship from Vox Machina? Again, in a D&D party, that's something that you would never even consider with your characters, because it's a game and you're playing
never
people.
Comes across your mind.
Yeah. But here in the actual story, the writers kind of had to ask an interesting question of do people jump ship? Do people want to jump ship from the party? And that's something that you never actually really get to explore in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign or tabletop itself, because it's a collaborative game and it's not like the DM can split into two different people and DM two games simultaneously in order to entertain this notion.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting thing, mostly because with the concept of D&D usually always being a group thing, you never really consider if this person or part of the group leaves, what happens next. Yeah. Because while a lot of groups, like in D&D, will have NPC guests come in, or even guest players, like even Critical Role does at some point.
Oh, they do a lot of that.
Campus. Yeah, because I know Mika Burton was in one of them.
Mika Burton, there's actually, once we get into season 2 of this, hopefully next year, there's going to be a couple really good guests that are going to be coming on, and I hope they get to voice their characters.
That'd be great if they did.
I'm very excited for it. If you know, you know. If not, then we'll get there.
Okay. But because some guests coming in every now and then, or sometimes you may wonder where do they go next, or whatever. So with it being a core party member, you don't ever think what could happen in that situation.
And I'm wondering when the ball's gonna drop. My big thing is okay, Vex is getting jealous, you can clearly see that she's getting kind of jealous of the fact that Keyleth is spending time with her brother, and there's this whole little romance blooming. And you can tell that that's happening. You can tell that that's going to be a plot point. I'm wondering when that shoe's going to drop, specifically this season. I see that happening sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And there was an element in the original campaign of Vex kind of being you be careful with her. But it was for different reasons that I'm not going to 100% get into. Just because I think that that's going to be something that's going to be explored later, and I'm excited for you to be able to see all that. And for you people at home that do not know Critical Role to also experience that.
We probably do that. The reactions eventually.
Yeah, I think we might go back and look at doing reactions. We're gonna have to constrict someone on the channel who has not seen the show yet to force them to watch Vox Machina in front of a camera. But hence now, let's talk about Fate's journey. So this is episode 5 of this season. Vox Machina gather their supplies and essentially just begin their journey. They seek help of Gilmore, who again flirts with Vax, notices a blooming friendship, and well, I guess blooming romance. Vax gets jealous, all that stuff. They also just are attacked on the road by undead dog-like creatures who manage to steal the book, Scanlan just barely escaping with his life, and then come to arrive in Whitestone to find the bodies of a family that has been hung on the great cultural touchstone, the Sun Tree. Their bodies mutilated to look like Vox Machina.
Oh, so grim.
Oh, yeah. When I told you, when I said that Matt Mercer took like a couple core aspects of Curse of Strahd and then brought them into this, like, I was not it's like he took Whitestone and just like, this is now a horrible place. No one likes to live here.
I'm glad I caught that was gonna happen. Like when they showed the images from Percy's description, I was like, yeah, that's not gonna happen.
No.
That's not gonna be what it looks like.
Yeah, you're just like that moment of just like, I'm preparing myself for loss.
Yeah. And when they showed when the little girl was saying, did we win a prize or something like that, I had I kind of had a feeling it was gonna be good. I thought it was gonna be like a sacrifice or something. Then they cut and I was like, oh.
But like, I kind of had that moment of like, it sucks that like in order for us to film a reaction, it would be extremely difficult on the production side because it's 3 episodes that we would have to put basically at the front of this conversation, and that would just make this an hour-and-a-half long video. But my face when I saw the pendant that they put around that little girl,
oh yeah,
I forgot that happened. I suppressed that shit. I was like, you know what, Matt Mercer, not today. I will not remember the family that you murdered. And then that happened, and I just immediately got fucking slammed in the face with essentially just horror. Vampires are scary, guys. Who knew? Very Ravenloft vibes. Did love it as much as I hated it. One of the interesting things in this episode is that the plot takes a backseat away from Percy and now kind of focuses on specifically the twins and actually starts this B plot with Pike. For the first time, we end up seeing Pike in this weird sort of like blacked out mountainy, watery area, and she's in full belief that she has been cursed by Lady Briarwood. And she just cannot keep touch with Saren Ray, and she is trying to get back in there and see and access her powers.
Right.
I have no idea what any of this is.
Yeah.
I full stop. This is completely new. I'm like, part of me is like, this is the moment where I feel like we have to just take a step away and be like, let's forget that this is a Dungeons and Dragons game just for this instance. Because what they're about to do, I think, is they're about to try and explain holy magic. And I think we're about to get an actual explanation on how at least the holy magic system works. Now, I have no idea how this is going to manifest. Originally, I thought it was, her holy symbol broke. She has to get a new holy symbol. The only place that she can do that is at the Temple of the Everlight. Do you have any thoughts on this? Because I'm fucking stumped.
Well, you can tell that I already have like almost no clue what's actually going to happen, but I feel like it's going to be one of those things like with Spider-Man 2. You remember where
believe in yourself, Peter.
Yeah, that kind of bullshit. That like she's just losing her faith and like not really like either trusting her instincts or something like that. But I think also it's like going to be one of those things where maybe it's like another symbolism of like level up or something that or like a boost or some kind of thing.
She does have a level up in between in the original. She's like, one of the things to note is that the like Pike's absence in the beginning of the when they actually get into Whitestone is very palpable in the original gameplay, where they're getting hurt all the time. Scanlan and Keyleth are still, like, it's a bard and a druid, so they're still healers, but for this show, they have decided that healing magic is off the table for both of them. That's specifically a Pike thing.
Right.
So that's a very important note, that's a very important choice that they made, because odds are we're going to see one of our main characters get very badly hurt before she comes back. And there were reasons why it affected the gameplay, because clerics have like turn undead. They will literally, and I think at their level they're like level 10. They're past level 10. I think they might be level 12 or 13, which at which point, from a gameplay standpoint, turn undead turns into destroy undead. So that's a thing that clerics have, and not having that in the beginning. I mean, we see the giant undead things. It's bad time. We do not stand that. I'm going back to your point. I'm really worried that they're gonna make it a you don't believe in yourself kind of thing, like, because that is one of these sort of like tropes in media that never really sits well with me unless like it is an allegory for grief or something a little bit more character driven based. But we haven't been really given unless we get a Pike episode, like, I haven't really been given enough to really believe that is 100% what's going on. And I don't know where this is going to go, because Pike's story has been like very different based off of if you're reading the comics or if you're watching the stream. Like, there's just a bunch of different stuff that's happened with that character.
Yeah, I'm mostly just thinking of that just because, well, I think, like you said, it's kind of a common media trope. So I feel like that's a highly possible one, but I think overall it could really be almost anything.
Yeah, I'm hoping for the best. The writers for this show have kind of proven that they do understand how to get plot done. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I'm genuinely excited for the fact that I do not know what's going on with that character. We've already touched on the twins' sort of inner conflict through this. One of the interesting things that I thought about this episode was the fact that they opened up on the twins. And of course they had Keyleth and Rabbit form, but it almost made me think of that we were flashing back to twin backstory for a little bit. So for we haven't seen too much of their upbringing in bits, but there's a reason why these two characters have the skill sets that they do. And they are both very stealthy, and one is a rogue and one is a ranger. So there is kind of a necessity to them in this way, and the fact that they are so ready to go off on their own, it kind of speaks volumes to the situation. That being said, one of the other more interesting elements in here is the actual book that gets taken away from them, and the little bits of cracking of it that they are able to get done. So the whispered one is still at play. That's the one thing they're able to notice. There's also mention of this thing called the ziggurat, which is supposed to be this giant temple that is used for worshiping the gods.
Okay.
So I know exactly what happens with this. So where's your mind with that? What like little bits of story is that? Where could this thing even be?
Well, I'm pretty sure in outside of here I've heard of the ziggurat, either in some campaigns or just reading through, like when I was doing my own DM stuff. But I really don't know when it comes to the show. It's just like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's a thing. There's a ziggurat. This is supposed to be a pretty large, like, this is not a small thing that exists here. Like, the way what they describe is essentially a temple. And we've been to the locations in the show so far, and we're at where the Briarwoods keep their hold. Is this something that you think that they have on hand? Is this something that exists is this something that exists in Whitestone? Like, how do you think that this thing's going to come into play?
I do think it's probably something that exists in Whitestone, but as far as coming into play, I'm not too sure. I feel like maybe it will come like a behold and like something pops up and it's the ziggurat or whatever, or like a way to access it or something
They
like
just
that.
summon the ziggurat from
Yeah,
from the ether. Just
to my
drop it on
mind and from like the
Whitestone.
games and like shows and all that kind of stuff I've seen, it feels like that's how it would go.
It's just Ganon's castle from from Ocarina of Time
Yeah.
pops up. I mean, valid actually. That is something that could happen. Anything's fair game if you don't know if you haven't watched the plot if you haven't watched the original campaign. The other interesting thing that I just want to gloss over real quick, they do additional character development things in this, just going over like monsters that they have slayed in the past, and a couple of these are campaign callbacks, and a couple of these are probably going to come into play later.
Oh, really?
There's one, I'm not going to call out which one.
Scanlan's, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's Canlan's. We're going to he conceived a child with the two-headed lady, and that's gonna come back for him. That is what that is.
It's funny because that's kind of a thing in our campaign right now. Not the conceived child, but that there's a child in play.
Oh, okay.
And it involves fucking paying child support.
Oh, love it. That sounds great. That sounds like an Eberron campaign. Yeah, there's one element in there which I didn't think that they were gonna do, but actually is something that I think it could pop up next season. It could also pop up it could also pop up in potentially season 3 or 4 based off of how they do the pacing. And I know that myself and other fans of the original show were absolutely psyched to see that backstory piece divulged there. Now, I think it's time to go. The other thing that I just want to kind of go into is we start getting a glimpse of Whitestone and the Briarwoods in particular. So we've already talked about the mutilation of the bodies. But there's something interesting that they mentioned. They mentioned that they have a schedule for something, and they have to stay on it. And this is before the book even comes back. And not only that, the town is in the state that it is. Now, if you had a village, if you're a vampire and you take over a village, what interest do you have in killing most of the inhabitants and having it be ruled by essentially undead and no one comes in and out? Why do you have that interest? And forget the whole part where like, oh, it's a vampire, it's to cover their thing. You have Lady Briarwood. She can probably do some crazy magic shit in order to get through with all this. These are D&D vampires. Like, a lot of the stuff that you can think of, just forget about the garlic. Forget about the garlic, forget about the sunlight for a little bit. Just think of them as all-powerful beings.
I feel like something should come to my mind, but I gotta be honest, I'm kind of drawing a blank right now. I want to say it's something like just getting rid of a town like off the map, like make it just basically non-existent, and then go on to the next one or something like that.
Okay, interesting.
That's one of the main things that's coming to my head.
So like maybe the Briarwoods kind of move from town to town, sort of doing this. But why? What is their like that's a byproduct for sure. Why do they do that? Is it to feast on blood? Is it for like what is their specific gain of doing this from village to village?
Maybe it's for like a god or something like that, like as if like, because I know sometimes there's gods have like specific times where like either they're more powerful or need, or probably at their least powerful, so like to help either regenerate that power faster or something like that.
Okay.
So I want to assume it's something close to those lines.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that because I can't say
That means
anything.
yes, it is.
However, we will find out this season. All of those answers, any question I'm asking will likely be answered unless I specifically say I have no fucking idea what's going on. So with that, let's go into the last episode in this 3 block. A spark of rebellion. Vox Machina goes in, everything's bad. They go and they find Keeper Yennon, who is the original Holy Woman of Whitestone. For whatever reason, the Briarwoods have decided to let her continue to exist and do not find her teachings unfavorable as long as it keeps the civilians essentially riled down. The Keeper Yenin also notes that there have been many different forms of resistances that have failed. However, there is a current one, and the leader, who is actually one of Percy's friends from childhood, is currently being held in prison, which had an interesting design. It kind of looks like a church, but it definitely looks like a prison on the inside. I can't tell if they're harkening back to I can't tell if they're harkening back to an old location in the campaign, or if that's something that just happens to be there. Notably, though, the leader is being interrogated by Stonefell, who is this kind of just gross-looking purple dude.
But voiced by a great person.
Oh yeah, very I'm forgetting the name of the voice actor.
Darren DePaul.
Darren DePaul, thank you. And then the Duke, who is voiced by I'm also forgetting the name, but the character is what's important from this. It is the same voice as the Hound from Game of Thrones, and that character is gonna be a lot of fun later down the line. So Vox Machina meets up with the remainder of the resistance, and they unstealthily infiltrate / storm the prison.
Classic D&D.
Yeah, it literally plays out like there's even a whole, I think, 10 minutes of them just trying to unlock a door from the back, which is harkening back to a moment in the game where I think we spent 30 minutes with those three characters trying to unlock a door.
I might try to find that part in the episode.
It is phenomenal. It is probably one of the most phenomenal moments of that campaign for just pure player fuckery. Not a single one of those characters could open a door, and they had the rogue. That being said, they storm the prison, and Percy sees Stonefell and immediately goes into "I must destroy," and goes no mercy Percy, as we like to call him, risks the whole goddamn mission and blows Stonefell to bits. And an interesting thing happens. We watch a new development that has been shown, that Percival's Pepperbox has a series of names written on each of the 6 barrels. And we watch as Stonefell's name burns off the barrel on Stonefell's death. Percy then finds out that his sister is alive, and kind of in a disjointedly murdery way, for that only someone that has just had a psychotic break looks at a giant fire and says, "I have a sister." And then we see said sister looking out a window with both Briarwoods behind her. An interesting note here is we've already done a pretty deep dive into the whole Percy element. However, there's a line in the beginning of this episode, you blink and you miss it, where they are talking about, there is the resistance is talking about the Crestal and this person / thing's whereabouts with the Briarwoods, and that they have been moved. What do you think that is? What is that significance?
I guess I'm one of those that blinked and missed it, because I honestly do not remember.
Oh, okay.
Granted, it was also a few days ago, but still. Yeah, I have nothing.
So there is an additional element. There appears to be the resistance appears to be in contact with someone or something that has now been moved into the possession of the Briarwoods, and that's like the first thing that gets introduced, and will probably be expanded upon later. However, it will likely be an important piece to this, just based off of the emphasis of this and the fact that it seems to be the one thing that the resistance has going for it, and the one reason why they think that they have some say in what's going on. The other element here, of course, is Percy, the gun, and the smoke, and that mask. So this is the second time that we see him going into this mode. And again, I have to ask you, what do you think this is? Because now we're getting a little bit more of a glimpse as to what's going on.
I don't know if I want to go with like possession, or, in lack of other words, like a berserker mode of some sort. I'm not gonna say rage, because Grog already done it, and that's completely different. But like, also, I haven't done much looking into the gunslinger fighter archetype, so I don't know if that plays a part of it.
It has nothing to do with the gunslinger fighter archetype.
I maybe it's just backstory stuff. Well, I mean, more than likely backstory stuff, but like,
I mean, yes,
but like to be specific with it, I'm not too certain. Like, I almost want to say something like double personality or something like that.
What do you double personality? Okay, what do you think the manifestation of the smoke is?
Oh, that's a good question, but I can't tell at all. I don't know if it's maybe a lingering effect from the Briarwoods attack when they were younger.
Okay, so maybe this is something that the Briarwoods actually planted in Percy himself.
Possibly, or like maybe affecting his whole family, but for some reason it didn't affect Percy like the rest of them, maybe, or because I know Stonefell and the Briarwoods killed the rest of the family, but
yeah.
I don't know if the smell was part of it or if it was just something that lingered or something like that. Like, I'm getting kind of like the vibes of like the Terrigen Mist from Marvel, where like it affected people, but I don't know if that's like even close to like the idea.
I'm not familiar with that.
It's basically the kind of thing that so like it was a gas that got emitted, and then for quick example, Kamala Khan, she got infected with this mist and then gained superpowers, and that's how she became Miss Marvel.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like something that like shows itself like we see with the smoke, but it's something that kind of gives the vibe to me, at least.
Okay, so those are actually I cannot give too much away.
Yes,
There's some interesting pieces there. Again, I can't say anything. This is for speculation for the people that do not know that. Also, if you're in the comment section, please don't spoil things for other people.
Be decent.
Yeah, be okay. And if you are going to be spoiler-ish, be vague about it.
And also possibly put a spoiler warning.
That is also fair. The other element here is Cassandra and the Briarwoods, that last sort of bit. It's with her staring out the window and them both behind her. The Cassandra's been kept alive, even after being shot down and dragged back. Now, there's vampires at play. How are you feeling about this development?
Easily sacrifice.
Sacrifice, okay.
Or bait. It could be bait too. I'm leaning towards sacrifice though.
Okay. So seeing it as sacrifice. So you see, so there's sacrifice going on. We see an ancient god that's being involved in all this with the Whispered One. And something about a ziggurat potentially in Whitestone. So those are the pieces that we think we have on the board right now.
Yep.
Okay. All these elements are going to be certainly at play. One of the things I like about this, as opposed to covering Attack on Titan, is that we're going to get a lot quicker results as far as answering these questions. However, there will be some more questions for the long term. That being said, I can't really say too much about that, so we're just going to let that speculation exist. So for you now, thank you guys so much for watching it. This has been Too Fast, Too Movie. And also, let us know, if you don't know what's going on, what do you think Percy's actual deal is? What is that smoke? What's with the gun? And what do you think about Cassandra? And also, how are you feeling about the actual adaptation of a tabletop game to animation and how successful this is turning out to be? Like, I'm genuinely surprised, and I feel like there's, weirdly enough, a chance that we are going to start seeing other tabletop live streams looking at similar things. Potentially not, they would have to be on the size of something like Roll20 or the Adventure Zone. However, there is a possibility and a market now that some other places might jump onto this.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening.
I'm both excited and worried. But anyway, let us know how you're feeling. And don't forget, if this is your first time around, and especially if this is your second time here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and stick around. We're going to be covering all of this as well as some other tabletop RPG stuff in the near future, actually. And we have a very special live stream at the end of the month, actually.
Yeah.
We are playing Cat Cthulhu. It's Call of Cthulhu, except everyone is a cat. It is ridiculous. It is so much fun, and we cannot wait for you guys to see it.
Where Ben will be continuing his role as keeper.
I will.
And hopefully I go 3-3 on 3
you
for
think
Final
you'll
Girl.
be going 3-0 for Final Girl?
I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll see you next time, and it's Too Fast, New Movie.